weekly Zoom session for carers, just for an hour, for you to, well, we didn't specify what it was for, other than to meet with other carers. And everybody came back and said, yes, that would be really helpful. So that we started Carers Connected in January of last year. So it's been about 18 months now. And I kind of went with it with a blank sheet of paper, and I said to the carers, look, this is your group. What do you want? I'd kind of, in my head, I had the idea that what we would do, we'd get guest speakers in every week, and then we'd split out into breakout rooms, and they could have a chat and discuss things. It became very apparent early on that what the carers wanted to do was just chat to each other and then pray together. And we wanted to have that space of prayer as well, but again, for carers who are isolated from within their church communities. So, and they said, Tina, we don't want to hear from experts. You know, we know where to go to get expert advice. What we want is just to talk to other carers. And so that's what we did. And it started 18 months ago. And we meet every Thursday for an hour, 3 till 4. And we chat for about 45 minutes. And then we pray together. And when we came to the end of lockdowns, I said to the carers, you know, perhaps this group was just for a season, you know, all your activities are starting again now. Perhaps we should just stop. And they all said, oh, please don't stop. We love this group. We feel like the people in the group are now our friends. And they said, well, one of the things that's lovely for us is we don't have to find a sitter for the person that we're looking after. And so it's carried on. So everything I'm telling you today, this evening, about carers has come out of this experience of being with carers for the last 18 months, journeying with them. And, you know, it's a little bit from the coalface, because I was on the phone today to a carer for an hour, you know, and actually some of the things we chatted about I'm going to bring into this session. So if I get a little bit emotional, it's because I've got to know these carers over the last 18 months, and there's such a sense of love within the group. They all look after one another, and they've all become friends. It's just incredible. And I suppose it's not surprising, because carers are caring, you know, and that's what they do. Now, I know some of you have had a caring role, some of you might be carers, so if this touches any nerve points today, then, you know, take a deep breath. Let's talk about things. Your experience of caring might be different, but let's learn from each other as well. So to start, well, there we are, this is what I plan to go through today. So we're going to talk about the lived experience of carers. We're going to talk about the impact of caring on carers. And then we're going to talk a little bit about guiding principles for churches. And when we talk about churches, that's you and me, we're the church, in supporting carers. And then I'm going to point you to some other resources. So that's where we're heading this evening. You know, it's easy to start some of these sessions with a whole load of statistics. And I could give you all those statistics, and I will give you some later. But actually, in the end, all those statistics are individuals with a lived experience of caring and within that caring role. So what I wanted to do to start with is take you on an imaginative journey. Now, I know some of you won't need to use your imagination very much for this journey that we're going to go on. And what I want to do is get you thinking about what it might feel like to be a carer. Ooh, some thunder. That's actually a positive sign, isn't it? We might get some more rain and clear the air. So we're going to journey in a carer's shoes and feel a bit about what it might feel like. Now, carers come in all shapes and sizes. I'm just choosing one scenario for this journey. It's by no means the only scenario that people are in a caring role for. So what I want you to do, I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to allow your mind to journey with me. I want you to imagine that you're married and you're about to retire. So how do you feel? Actually, on the one hand, you might be feeling a little bit apprehensive of being in this new season of life, or your roles changing, but part of you is quite excited as well. You know, you're dreaming of all the things that you want to do now that you've got more time on your hands. I wonder what some of those things are for you. Might be pursuing a hobby that you haven't had time to do. It might be sorting the garden out that's been needing some work recently, or the house. Perhaps you hope to go travelling more, see some of the world with your spouse and see far-flung places now that the world is opening up again post-COVID. Maybe you want to buy a camper van and travel around the UK and Europe. The world is your oyster. You can go anywhere, do anything. If you're feeling a bit more spiritual, you might be wondering, God, what is the next thing you have for me in this season of my life? There might be ministries that you're exploring and you're excited about how God might use you in new ways. Or perhaps you're just looking forward to spending more time with your friends and family. Perhaps your married life isn't all that you wished it would be. You're wondering how you're going to cope being with your partner 24/7. You're hoping your spouse develops a few hobbies as well that will take him or her out the house so that you can have some space and some peace. It might be a mixture of all the above, all those different emotions and thoughts churning around. But suddenly, life throws you a curveball. And unexpectedly, your spouse has a major stroke, and it's left them paralysed down one side and struggling to communicate. So within the space of a few weeks, your life changes dramatically. Instead of dreaming of holidays and hobbies, you're now planning how on earth you're going to manage at home. Your spouse needs help getting washed, getting dressed, going to the toilet, and all the other activities of daily living that we just take for granted. They've all now become an effort. And their personality seems to have changed a little bit too, and that's created a few other tensions. We're now going to fast forward a year. You've had pretty much the same routine every day, helping your spouse get up, get dressed, assisting throughout the day with food and toileting. Their mobility has improved a little bit, but their personality changes remain, and communication is becoming more difficult as they struggle to find their words. People keep telling you, you should get some help, you can't do this on your own. But you just don't know how your spouse will respond to somebody else. And besides which, it's really expensive getting in carers. And even though you're getting attendance allowance, it's a pittance compared to what you need. Okay, you can open your eyes. Sorry to depress you all. How are you feeling a year into your caring role? Any thoughts? Frustrated. Resentful. Depressed, tired, trapped, bewildered. Yeah. Why me? Yeah. Trepidation. I'm only repeating everything you're saying for the mic and the video, but yeah. Exhausted. Yeah.
Negative impact on your faith.
Negative impact on your faith, yeah.
Also with your health, I'm thinking I would be able to go and do my swimming and my clubs and things I need to do to keep fit myself, because I'll be looking after my partner.
Yeah, so you haven't got time to keep fit yourself. That's going to impact your health and your well-being as well, because actually exercise is good for your well-being, isn't it?
Stultified.
So
Stultified.
now you're going to have to tell me what that means, because my English is...
It's really what's being said.
Okay.
Stultified, I'll say it louder.
Stultified. Perhaps you're all more learned than me, you know what that means, but...
I don't know where that word came from, I don't normally use it.
Apparently it means all of the above. Okay. What I want us to do is we're going to get into groups, and perhaps we'll have 3 groups, a 3 and a 4 and a... Oh, you're 4 and a 4 and a 4. That's perfect. Okay, so, and I want us to think about the impact of caring on carers. What I have just given you is just a little kind of taster of what it might be like for some people. Obviously, for some people, it's not a sudden thing like a stroke. It's a gradual deterioration, whether that's dementia or Parkinson's or something else. So I've given you, I wanted one that had a sort of sudden change to help you understand some of the thoughts and feelings. But what we're going to do, in your groups, I want you to think about the impact of caring on carers. And we've talked about a few things here, but there's more. Can I turn that on again? Oh, there we are. And I want you to think in terms of the physical, emotional, financial, relational, and spiritual impact of caring on carers. And so you're going to have 10 minutes in your groups because there's quite a lot of things there. That's actually only 2 minutes on each subject, and then we'll feed back. Does that sound okay? So 10 minutes, starting from now. And if you're watching at home, you can be writing some notes of what you think. you want to bring your conversations to a close? Shall we regather? Wonderful. This group, do you want to talk about some of the physical impact of caring?
We did discuss that. We had a situation a few years ago where our sister had a stroke. Her parents, she lives with her parents, they're elderly. She came home on a peg, which nobody in the house could manage, but us. So we took it in turns to lift it.
I'm going to give you that to talk to while you're talking.
Yeah.
Just hold on to it and then we'll pass it round so that the
Okay.
people on video can hear.
And so, you know, packing yourself up for your 3-4 days, then getting yourself home, getting yourself sorted, ready to go back, do what your life is. It was physically demanding. You know, Kathleen improved and things moved on, but it was hard work.
Yeah, very physically demanding. Any other thoughts on physical challenges?
I think you don't look after yourself at all. You tend to eat more because you just can't be bothered to cook anything, so you just get whatever's in the cupboard, and then you think, oh, I'll have a treat, I'll have a cake or donuts or something, just because you're too exhausted to look after yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, so not looking after yourself and your own health. Any other thoughts from... Oh, yeah.
You might go downhill as well because you haven't done things the right way, like you might damage your back and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
absolutely. Yeah, physical injuries, because actually caring is a very physical role, or it can be.
Your own self-care will deteriorate. So you might start to look a bit dishevelled yourself. You'll lose interest in dressing up and having your hair done and all those things that take effort, because all your energy is going into being a carer and getting out to do those things, to shop and have your hair done and look after yourself. You don't get the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
How did you find it, Reg?
What, the conversation just now?
No.
In terms of physically.
Physically, I put on 3 stone when I was looking after my wife, simply because I liked cooking, I enjoyed cooking, I did nice food, she wouldn't eat it, and then I found myself eating her food that she never ate. But yeah, very demanding. I think the most significant thing was that I only managed to get to 1 church service in 2 years. And that was before Zoom, so just 1 service in 2 years, and because I just couldn't get my wife out.
Well, that takes us on to spiritual. Perhaps we'll flip to spiritual then. Any other thoughts on spiritual? We'll start with this group over here now.
Because I'm trying to think of something positive. I mean, sometimes it could be a situation where if one partner is a believer and the other is not, then it might be an opportunity for that other person to go to church. Or if you're a carer and your partner is not a believer, then that partner might join in a bit more. Is what I'm hearing, that it has happened in some churches. So the person that's disabled in some way may become more spiritual because their partner is encouraging them to do that. On the more negative side, isolation. If you're a carer and your partner's isolation, as Reg said, not able to get to church, but also house groups. You may get out of the routine of reading your Bible. You can still do that on your own, but sometimes it's harder when you're on your own because there aren't people around there to encourage you in your faith, which is very important. Yeah, that was
Yeah. Anyone from this group want to add any more on the spiritual impact?
We didn't really get on to spiritual.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. It's
The Zoom group that you've run for 18 months, the carers, do they get to church?
or were they? Did that come up? Because I found that quite profound.
It varies between carer to carer. It depends on, I know one lady was looking after her husband, and as he became more physically deteriorated, she just physically couldn't manage to push him to church. Sometimes if people are looking after a loved one with dementia, they might be worried about how their loved one is going to be in the church environment and how the others around might react to that. So I would say it just depends on lots of individual circumstances, but it's very common for carers not to be able to get to church. And sadly, what can also happen is people in the church don't necessarily realise that that's why they're not coming, and so they just drop off the radar. And there's been some interesting research done about how the caring role affects people spiritually. And for some people, it's been a positive experience in terms of having to lean into God and trust Him for everything. For some people, it can be negative in terms of why me, you know, and not being able to process that. And I think as well, some of the research was saying that it can then also be very difficult for carers to get back into church, because especially if they felt let down by the church, you know, if they've just dropped off the radar and nobody has shown care and love towards them, then, you know, they then find it really hard to come back into that environment. How about financial? How about if this group wants to start? Did you go on to talking about financial?
I mean, I can just say that it was that when I was looking after Mum and Dad, it was a constant, real worry, because my dad insisted on doing the finances till eventually he couldn't do it, and then there wasn't really very much money left, so it was quite difficult till they sold their house, and then. But that was a big thing then. It's very difficult, because it's very difficult to get money. And I was lucky that I could fill the forms in, because my mum could never have filled in any. The forms are so complicated. To fill in that form, it took me ages. So.
Form filling, oh my goodness, I talked to carers in our group. All the hoops they have to jump through just to get some basic help. It's just criminal. So definitely.
Attendance allowance has 30 pages.
Yeah.
That form.
Yeah, if you want respite care, so much. Any other thoughts on financial from this group? Did you get onto that at all?
We talked about the cost for people about being property rich but cash poor, that having adaptations to the home can be quite expensive, and they may not be able to do that, and may need to look for grants and things outside. But there again, it's more form filling, and it's where what the criteria is for the local authority, whether they'll get a disabilities facilities grant for a home adaptation, and they need help to do that, form filling. What else did we say? Financial. Oh yes, about the role, as you've mentioned before, the role. Whoever is the one that did all the house finances, it now becomes the other. You know, if they're incapacitated, it's the other person that has to take that role on. Maybe a whole new set of skills they've got to learn to deal with that, handle that now.
Traditionally, many women have left that to husbands and just have no idea where their family finances are, or what's, you know, they've never had to deal with that. So that's a big area that suddenly
absolutely
needs help.
And also these days, computers. I mean, you know, whoever was the computer expert in the household, if they're incapacitated, the other one suddenly got to learn very fast how to manage all their accounts and things online.
Yeah. And I think especially now with the whole cost of living crisis as well, that you know, if you've got someone at home who's incapacitated, you've got to keep the house warmer. You've also got more laundry often for various reasons, and so costs can hugely escalate as well. So we've looked at, I think we kind of talked about emotional initially, didn't we, when we talked about people's reactions to that first scenario. What about, let's talk about relational. Perhaps we'll start with, did you get onto relational at all? Here we are.
That maybe the relationship will change, you know, from husband and wife to carer and patient. So the dynamics can change, the roles can change, communication can be disrupted by, particularly with a stroke if there's a speech impairment. through the stroke, or personality changes, you know, outbursts, angers, that sort of thing, how to handle that. So the dynamics will change in the relationship. A change of personality for some people that have had strokes, and how to deal with that as a carer may be very difficult. Guilt was mentioned. What was guilt mentioned?
Yeah, if the person who's being cared for could be feeling guilty because they are dependent on their partner, and doesn't really know how to express, or always saying sorry, or
Thank you. Any further thoughts on relational here? Yeah, go for it.
It's the extended family helping out, and they've got like children and stuff. They might feel they're being pushed. The children might feel they're being pushed to one side, or the partner, or who, husband, or whatever, feel, oh, they're always there. What about me? And what about us?
Yeah, that's true. And especially if you're looking after your parents and you're looking after your children as well. Yeah, there's that whole dynamic there being pulled in lots of directions.
Here's one that you might not want to think about, but imagine that you are married and that you enjoy giving one another hugs and kisses. And when one loses their thoughts and dementia creeps in, that all goes as well. And so therefore you have a big emotional deficit or void that can't be filled in any other way.
Yeah, that's very true. Thank you for sharing that. I was going to add something to that and it's gone right out of my head. But yeah, thank you. One of the ladies I was chatting to today said she hasn't had a proper kind of husband-wife relationship with her husband, who she cared for 10 years. You know, and yeah, there's that huge deficit there. She would often say to us in the group, I just want a hug. So, yeah. Okay, thank you. I'm going to put this back on, and apologies to the people on the video who had to cope with that. But hopefully you got some of it. What I want to do now is to read you a poem. And this poem was sent to me by someone who is within our Carers Connected group. He looks after his wife who has dementia. And he wrote this during lockdown. And I said, oh, can I share this with others? Because I think it's quite profound. It's called At Night. At night, the tears often trickle down my face in the dark. I lay in my usual place, my Jackie next to me. We are together but separated by the night. It should be well with my soul, but it isn't. It never will be now. Though I know my God is always there, faithful God, so unchanging, my secure rock, my constant helper. I lay my doubts, fears and anxiety on him. These last months have seen change. The pandemic has accelerated change. I try to maintain routine, but it's nigh impossible. The unimagined and daily unmanageable merge together, then split apart. I desperately strive to keep and hold the tiny individual pieces of daily living knitted, but they break and splinter every time. A friend makes contact. It is remote because of the virus. It feels remote. Each day's challenges take a little more of my being. I am become what I do not wish to be, a living shadow of myself. Nearly 60 years of love continues and will continue until we are parted by sweet death. I'm not afraid of death, though I'm often frightened of living. My faith in the living God alone sustains me. It's just one carer's journey with looking after their loved one with dementia. I want just now to show you some stats, just because I think it's important to put things into context. So these are taken from the 2021 State of Caring Survey, which is the largest annual survey of carers. I'm using these figures are recorded in 2020 and then a report comes out in 2021. There is a new one that from that was more pandemic, but I think that's a bit skewed, so that's why I'm choosing to use this one instead. So 1 in 8 adults are carers. Now, when you think of the size of your congregations, that means there's at least one carer probably in your congregations. And it rose to 1 in 4 during the pandemic, because obviously people needed a lot more help and support. 8 out of 10 carers feel lonely or isolated. This rose to 9 out of 10 during the pandemic, and with 34% saying they often or always felt lonely. 30% of carers say their mental health is bad or very bad. 25% say physical health is bad or very bad, and 31% struggling to make ends meet financially, and that was before this huge cost of living rise. So I think it's just worth seeing that, isn't it? It puts it in stark reality as well, and the scale of things. But we just don't often hear about it, do we, in church? Because often for carers, they're out of sight and out of mind. So what I want us to think about now is how, as churches, can we support carers? And where I got this information, or how I've put this together, is where we had 2 sessions within our Carers Connected group where we said to the carers, we want to find out how churches can best support you. Can we have 2 kind of open discussions around it, and then we'll produce this guide. So this has come out totally from what carers have said to us about how they want churches to support them. So I think that's all of them there. I'm going to add one more at the end, but the first thing is about seeing carers. You know, as I say, often they're out of sight and out of mind, so we have to be intentional about looking for carers. And what I would say is that carers come in all shapes and sizes. I'm sure that's no surprise to you, but often there might be people who come to our churches on Sunday that we don't realise are carers. When I started Carers Connected, this chap in my church came up to me and said, "Oh, Tina, can you tell me more about your carers group?" And I was a bit surprised because I had absolutely no idea he was a carer. He comes with his wife to church, and but actually what we see on a Sunday is just a real small glimpse of people's lives, isn't it? And he was actually quite involved in caring for his wife. So, you know, be on the lookout for carers. And
There's an organisation called Young Carers, because there are quite a few children who are at school that actually have a caring, very much of a caring role at home as well.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And also, so there's children, it goes through the ages, you know, there's people in the middle ages of life whose parents are aged as well, so they're caring for parents, and then obviously spouses as well. So yeah, it does go through all the generations. Actually, I'm a charity for older people, so I mainly focus on the older generations, but that's a really good point, thank you. And bearing in mind that carers, as we've heard, might not always be able to get to church easily due to whether that's physical challenges or the challenges of dementia or something else. Just because they're not there, it's up to us to follow up, you know, and come alongside them. It's not necessarily a reflection of a lack of commitment or anything like that. And another story, so this one lady who's part of our caring group, her husband has dementia. Her husband never went to church, he's not a Christian, and she is. When she joined our carers group, she said that hardly anyone in church knew that her husband had dementia, because it's just not, her husband didn't come to church anyway, it's not something she talked about, and if, you know what it's like in church, she said, I'm fine. And she said it was the first time being in this group of carers that she'd actually really talked about it and some of the challenges. So seeing is really important. Secondly, listening. It's really important that we give carers the opportunity to express how things are, you know, and share things. But we have to be aware of a number of things in this. First of all, they're very unlikely to be open about the struggles that they're having in front of the person they're caring for, because they don't want to make that person feel guilty, you know. So we need to find the right time and the right place to talk to carers. And as we all know, it can be really hard, well, I find it hard, perhaps you're all better than me, that to be sometimes open about the things that we're struggling with, isn't it? You know, it makes us vulnerable. So we need to be mindful of that. You know, there's no point asking someone at the end of church on Sunday, how are you, how's things going? Because they're not going to, or another social occasion, because they're not going to want to dampen the mood of the occasion. They're very unlikely to want to be vulnerable in that situation, and they'll just say, I'm fine, but they're probably not, or they may not be. So we need to find the time and the right space to do it. And one thing one carer said was it can be really helpful, his vicar, at a regular time, I think it was once a month or whatever, when he would pop in and see him, and they would chat and pray together. And he found that really helpful because he could then organise someone to sort of be with his wife when he was chatting to the vicar. So scheduling that time where it's quiet, you can really sort of give someone some undivided attention in a space where they feel able to share. So listening is really important. And then praying with carers. And I think rather than just sort of saying, you know, I'll pray for you, it can actually be really good to say things like, is there anything I can pray for you at the moment? You know, because otherwise we can assume what their needs are at any given time. So I think just having that time and asking people, what can they pray for you at the moment? And they can be specific about their prayer requests. I remember one lady, her request was she needed a ramp to get the wheelchair in and out of the house. And actually, she mentioned it to her life group, and the life group were able to come up with a solution. So, you know, they can pray and they can also come up with solutions. But ask people specifically what their prayer requests are. And then including, you know, carers, as we've said, might not be able to come on a Sunday there, but they're still part of the church family. And we need to make sure that they feel loved and included and not forgotten about. And we do have to be intentional about this, you know, because sometimes it's the things that are right in front of us that we give our time to, isn't it? So if someone's not there, it is easy for them to become marginalised and overlooked. You know, it could simply be making sure they're kept up to date with all the latest news in the church. You know, it doesn't have to be anything too dramatic, but that's going to make someone think, oh, they thought about me. You know, they're including me in this. It's horrible, isn't it, when everyone else knows something and you don't know. So something simple like doing that, including them, giving them the church newsletter, if we still have church newsletters these days. We used to. I don't think we've had them post-pandemic. But anyway, that sort of thing, just making sure people feel included. And then this kind of goes with including as well, but enabling. When we had this discussion in the Carers Connected group, there was a retired vicar there, and he brought this up, and he said he'd been really challenged as a vicar of, was his church a church for the successful, so that only the successful felt they could come. And he said, we have to get this balance of wanting kind of things to be good from the front, you know, but at the same time, he said, are we going for performance or for participation? You know, and a performance and perfection versus participation and presence. So it's enabling people to do stuff, even if it's not going to be perfect. So when we started talking about this in the Carers Connected group, people gave some lovely examples, because what carers want is for their loved one to be enabled to participate. So it could be like one lady whose son has a learning disability. Her son used to do the Bible reading, and when I say his son, he's about in his 40s. You know, he's a grown-up son, and so he does the Bible reading at church. It might not be perfect, but it doesn't matter, you know, because church isn't about us all being perfect, is it? It's about family together. And another lady said her mum had dementia, and her mum had been really active within the church, and she couldn't do so much anymore because of the dementia. But I don't know, in Methodist churches and some churches, when they do communion, they have the individual little glasses. You know, I know we don't do that in C of E, although as a nurse, I think post-pandemic, yes, well, anyway, yeah. So what this lady used to do, she used to collect all the dirty glasses, and that used to be her role, and she could manage that within the limits of her dementia, but she felt she was participating. And then this other lady, she was a retired vicar. Both her and her husband were retired vicars, and he had dementia and a few other things going on as well. And over Zoom, now I might get this wrong because I'm not sure of all my Anglican language, but is it evensong? Is that right? And is there a special evensong for Lent or something like that? Okay, so it was Lent time, maybe it was Good Friday, I can't remember, but they needed someone to sing this special evensong. And on the Zoom call, they were like, well, who can do it? Who knows it? And the husband, who had dementia, was actually an amazing musician, and he knew all these things. And so even in his dementia, he did the evensong over Zoom, and this lady was saying it was just so special. He was really uplifted being able to do it, and everybody else, and this lady, you know, seeing him participate like that. So we just need to think about in our churches more, how can we help people to participate? You know, let's not worry about having a perfect show at the front. You know, I think it's a much greater demonstration to the world when we have imperfect stuff at the front where people are just loved within it. So that was the first thing, participation versus performance. And then for carers who have been involved in the life of the church, they still want to participate where they can, but they called it serving with a safety net. So enabling people to serve. So this one lady, she used to come and help at the seniors life group, but the life group knew that she may have to step back in an emergency. You know, sometimes when you're in a caring role, things happen and you've just got to respond. So it's like this serving with a safety net. So there was always someone who could step in if she couldn't do it at the last minute. But when she could, she was enabled to serve with that safety net underneath her. So you can apply that to any other roles that people might like to do. Might just be the Bible reading on a Sunday, you know, if they can come one Sunday, but then someone else can step in at the last minute. And another thing we can enable is connections with other carers, because there's something I've discovered that is really special about carers connecting with one another, that the people in our group, they say it's like there's an unspoken understanding. You know, they know what each other is going, not that they're all going through the same, but they understand the pressures and they can pray for one another. So if we can connect carers with others in other carers, then that's really good as well. So that's enabling. And then going on to offering practical help. I put that at the bottom because if you're anything like me, that's the first thing I want to do. You know, I want to offer practical help because I'm a fixer, and if I can fix it, I will fix it. But actually, there's a lot of things we can do before that, and we can't fix things necessarily. So in terms of a few thoughts around that is, I've said it in terms of prayer as well, that we shouldn't assume what a carer's needs are. One carer suggested this was a good question to ask, is what would help you the most at the moment? Because it might be something very different to what we think. So what would help you the most at the moment? And then keep on asking, because those needs will change over time. And also, I do this all the time, and I'm trying to learn not to do it. I say, like, let me know if there's anything I can do to help. Kara said, no, don't say that. That's a really annoying thing to say, because we need to be specific about the help we can offer. If someone says to you, oh, let me know if there's anything I can do to help, you are very unlikely to go and ask them for help. If someone says to you, look, can I cook you a meal next Wednesday, you know, just so that you don't have to do the cooking, someone's much more likely to say yes. So be specific about the help that you can offer, rather than just this generic, let me know what I can do to help. And someone suggested that within the group that it might be helpful to create a directory of what help is available within the church community. Like, this person could help with gardening, this person can help with IT, so that they know, and so it's very specific about who to go to for what need. So what I have here, just because I like to do my coloured grids for you, is just some ideas of practical help that people might need help with. Gardening. There's nothing more depressing. Oh, is that a bee? Sorry, is it a wasp? Oh, okay, sorry, I'm a bit of a wuss when it comes to anything that buzzes. Okay, especially when they're near my head, because I've had lots of stings to my head before. Okay, gardening, yeah, that's what I was saying. Nothing worse, and especially if you're someone who loves your garden, seeing it starting to get overgrown because you just don't have the time or capacity to get out. So that's a thing we can help with. Shopping, cooking, sitting, you know, offering, let me spend a few hours with your loved one. You go out, do whatever you like. You know, it doesn't have to be a practical thing. Go for a walk, do whatever. Emergency backup. This, I hadn't thought about this, but this came up a lot in the discussions, especially for people who are on their own looking after a loved one. It's that knowing that there was an emergency backup, that if anything happened to them, there was somebody they could call to say, can you help out? So having that emergency backup. Tech support. Who doesn't need tech support sometimes? That can be good. Research. What I mean by research is that, is this the wasp? Sorry, I cannot be a hero in this situation. Oh, who I can actually. Dead. Yes. I'm sorry if any of you are offended by that, but I don't like wasps. Okay, so getting back to what we were talking about, research. So what I mean by that is some of us, and I do include myself in this, are really good at researching things online. What help is available? What benefits are you entitled to? Things like that. What clubs and societies are around that might be useful to you? So if you're someone who's really good at that, you can come alongside a carer who perhaps just doesn't have the headspace or perhaps the skills for that sort of thing and help them with that. It can be really good. That's what someone specifically said about that. Housework, why not offer to do housework? Laundry, like we've said, laundry can become a really big issue when you're caring for someone. Giving lifts somewhere, so if someone's got a hospital appointment, it might even be a lift to church or something. Form filling, someone mentioned that, so I won't go over that anymore. Oh, I've got laundry twice, so that meant I missed something off. I can't remember what the thing is I missed off. But anyway. Pardon? Tech support. Yeah, sorry, that's not the best slide, is it? Anyway, that just gives you some ideas around some of the things you could do. But as I said, I didn't want to just jump into some of the practicals because there's a whole heap of other things that we talked about as well, which are all those. Most of them and have come from the group, and some of the things that I've just observed as well, so sort of stepping back a little bit from it. And I just, how are we doing on time? Oh, good. I just wanted to add one more thing, because this isn't something that came out of the group, but it's something I've observed, and actually perhaps when you're in the caring role you don't see that need so much, but when you step out of it, and that is supporting carers through transitions. A couple of things that people have said to me are really difficult as a carer. One is if their loved one moves into a care home. Oh my goodness, that can be the most heartbreaking moment for them, and we need to come alongside carers in that. You know, it's not that their caring role was finished, it's just changed, the dynamic has changed, and there can be so many emotions attached to a loved one moving into a care home. So we as the church can come alongside people in that journey with them through that transition and all the emotional turmoil that it creates as well. So that's a big one. The gentleman whose poem I read, Dave, his wife moved into a care home and he just couldn't cope with the separation at all. And so in the end, he took his wife out of the care home. Another gentleman, John, he's an ambassador for our charity, he tells the story of when his wife moved into the care home and just how distraught he was. You know, if you've been married and living together for a long time, you know, that separation it can be really difficult. So yeah, that was a thing, and that was just heartbreaking. Yeah, I haven't even included that in this because I'm hoping that's all over and done with now, but we've heard some just really sad stories of that, especially when the loved one has dementia and they don't understand what's going on. Why can't you visit? Why have I got to look at you through this screen? Oh, is it Reg? Oh.
Oh, well, it was worse than that, really. My wife got COVID and was locked in her room for 21 days.
Yeah, yeah.
Not locked physically, but almost.
Yeah, not allowed to leave.
Not allowed to leave, and no one allowed to go in other than a nominated person in PPE.
Yeah.
So that was very difficult. And the other thing was that my wife went into the home on the 5th of February. On the 6th of February, it felt as if my wife had died. From having her at home and looking after her 24/7, to suddenly thinking, I'm alone. Who am I looking after? And that took a few months to get over. But if I may just say one other thing that
Yes, you
I
may.
found the greatest problem that everybody will face is form filling. From the very simplest through to seeking aid, whatever you want. But some of the forms are horrendous.
Yeah.
The other thing is that you send them off to people and they're constantly changing. So you need to have a record as if you were at work, ordering a very big contract with every little bit of thing you do. You document in a very ordered form, because you ring a number, you expect to get a person there. Oh no, they've moved on. You've now got somebody. But now we're all working from home, so you have no idea who you're going to get. It's just the person who picks the call up. So consequently, form filling, I think, where you might say offering practical help, for everybody, that will be the number one step. That'll be the real difficulty.
Yeah.
And once you've gone through it, you can help people. You can point them in the right direction.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that I've heard that as well. And I think one of the things is when you're in a caring role, you don't necessarily have that much capacity left to fill out all these long, complicated forms, you know, and jump through all these hoops and talk to someone and then talk to someone else and have to explain everything all over again. So, yeah, definitely.
I did a health and welfare power of attorney for my mother-in-law. It was a nightmare. I'm a solicitor. I mean, it was crazy. Mainly because they were so inefficient. Well, I like to think it wasn't just my fault, but I'm sure there was some on me.
You mustn't mention the office of the public guardian, because they're very hard.
They're very hard. But getting this through and just them responding to communications from me, I mean, I've now heard a year later she's got it.
There are other organisations that help the form filling. The Citizens Advice for a long time now is only allowance, and Age UK help with only allowance, I think, and other disabilities like power of attorney. I think Macmillan, they have specialists that can get it very quickly for people that have to act quickly because they're facing life pain. So there are. I mean,
It's just knowing who to turn to for that sort of thing.
there are people you
Yeah.
don't need to do it. There are people, is what I'm trying to say. So
Yeah.
Citizens Advice are very good. They'll point you in the right direction.
But you've still got to fill the forms in.
But they often will help you do that, though. That's what I'm saying. They have workers that come out and do that. Oh, yeah.
Okay. I just want to move on to one last thing then in terms of supporting carers through transitions, is the transition of when the loved one they're caring for dies. Because, you know, it's easy to think, oh, what a relief for them in a way because, you know, they don't have this caring role anymore. But that's not necessarily the case at all. And it was really interesting, the conversation I was having today. One of the ladies in our carers group, she did a little devotional thing one week a few months back, and I don't know if any of you heard of What 3 Words. It's an app and it pinpoints exactly, and she'd heard this talk about what 3 words would you use to describe yourself, you know, like where your identity is based. Now we all know our identity is in Christ and all that sort of thing, but our identity is also in other things as well, in our relationships and things like that. So, you know, as a carer, that is part of your identity as a carer. And when I was chatting to her on the phone today, she said, Tina, she said, you know, I keep going back to what 3 words, you know, she said, my primary thing was I was a carer and now I'm not a carer anymore. She said, I don't know where my identity is. And this is a lady who's a strong Christian. And she said, yeah, I know it's in God and that, but there's something she's processing of understanding her identity now that her caring role has finished. And also even, again, as I say, she's a strong Christian, but getting back into church because she's been in a caring role for 10 years and obviously especially during lockdowns, going to church has been more difficult, and as our husbands become more unwell. And church changes actually over time, and you haven't sort of been a part of all that change. So it's really, really important that we journey alongside carers during these transitions, whether it's going into a nursing home or when their loved one dies, and journeying with them through the bereavement, but through the kind of transition that goes with that as well in terms of their identity and everything. So that is really all I wanted to say. Have I got any other slides? Oh, I've done that one. Oh, there, you know all that anyway. Any questions?
I've just been wondering how big your Carers Connected group is.
That is a very good question. We normally have about 8 to 10 people every week. So it's not massive, but the link goes out to about 25 people. But not everybody comes every week because it's the nature of being a carer, you know, things happen. But nearly every week there's 8 to 10. We actually are in the process of trying to expand it so that we can offer an evening one as well, but we need a volunteer to help co-host an evening group. We've got one volunteer, but we need another one. So until we get that second person in place, we can't offer an evening group. So if any of you have got a heart for carers and want to help co-host an evening group, doesn't matter where you live because it's all on Zoom. So we eventually want to expand it and have different groups on different days. So because we don't want to have a group that's bigger than 12, because you lose some of the dynamics of sharing in a bigger group. So we haven't actually advertised it that widely. It tends to be people hear about it word of mouth, or we've had a few articles in the Christian press, but generally we've kept it quite low profile until we've got the capacity to expand it. Yeah.
So in effect, I can think of 2 people, there must be many more around in St Mary Magdalene's and in other All Saints who are carers. So if they wanted a little bit of
they're very welcome to join. They need to email me and I can send them. We don't put the link online because we don't want any Tom, Dick and Harry turning up into the group or bombing it, whatever people do. So we send the link out every week. But if they get in, give them my email address or my number. Sometimes people want to ask about it first because it takes quite a lot of courage just to turn up to a new group. So they can always give me a ring and I'll talk to them about it.
or they can listen to your talk.
Yeah, they can do that as well. Yeah. But we're always, it's a very welcoming group. We're always open for new people coming along. So, and as I say, hopefully we'll have this second group soon as well. And the idea is just to then multiply out. Yeah. Any other questions?
What about your charity, really? So you're doing the Carers Connected, and the literature, presumably, but there are other things that you're involved in as well. I'm interested about that.
We have 3 main strands to the charity. So the first is care homes, befriending care home residents. So that's our main thing that we do actually, and encouraging churches to adopt their local care home. And we have areas, so the Borough of Richmond is one area. We've got another area on the Isle of Wight where we have paid staff who recruit volunteers to get volunteers into care homes. So as well as encouraging churches to adopt their local care home, we also have these projects in areas, and we're just about to start a 3rd area in either Hampshire or West Sussex. So if any of you know anyone in Hampshire or West Sussex who's got a heart for older people, point them to our website because we're recruiting right now. So that's our first main area is just befriending care home residents, supporting care homes, and encouraging churches to adopt a care home. Our second area is carers, which is what I've talked about today. It's specifically the Carers Connected group. We also have a Facebook group for them so that they can connect with one another outside of the meeting. It's a closed group, but they can chat to one another. And then our 3rd area is equipping churches, which is what I'm doing tonight. Yeah. Yes, so that's our 3 kind of areas of work. Yeah.
Would you be able to speak at things like Deanery
Yeah, yeah, I've done that sort of thing before, so very happy to do that. Oh, thank you.
That's some flowers,
Oh,
just a
thank you.
very little gift.
That's really sweet, thank you.
Both St Mary's and All Saints, we've contributed to a little gift that's gone straight to Tina, I think.
It's gone to the charity, yeah. I don't do them to me, I always do it to the charity. So.
That's fantastic. Well, I just want to say a really big thank you for coming all the way here from Twickenham and
Such
giving
a
us
long way.
these really enlightening talks. I just haven't really thought about this area before, and have learned a huge amount. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Good. Well, perhaps I can pray for all of you before I go. I would love to pray for you all. God's blessing in your work and ministry amongst older people. Okay. Right. Father, thank you for these sessions that we've had together. Father, thank you for your big heart for the older generations. And Lord, I just pray your blessing on all the people here and those who've come to some of the other talks, Father. Lord, I pray that you would just anoint them in their work and ministry amongst older people, Lord, that they would see fruit from the work that they're doing, Father, that older people would be built up and encouraged and just know your love expressed through them. In Jesus' name, amen.
And Father, thank you for Tina. Thank you for her ministry. Father, I pray that you'd bless it. And all those that work in it, all those who are volunteers, to pour out your love and compassion in all of those who work in that area. Father, I pray that Tina will go from strength to strength in this, and that the word will get out in more and more churches and places about this important work of supporting carers. In Jesus' name.
Amen.